Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats.
I dare say it's more of a fact than a theory at this stage, but if you're within the sound of my voice, then you must be in the seats with once again. As always, my name is Dave Voigt, and I am your venerable host for this podcast where we interview various industry professionals from the entertainment industry. And not only talk about their current projects, but pick their brain on the state of the industry, the state of the art form, how it can move forward, and so on and so forth. As always, you can find this fantastic podcast either on Spotify, on Apple, or you can find it all archived over on our YouTube channel at In the Seats. And as always, please don't forget to follow us on social media, either at In the Seats or at It's Podcast One on either Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. And finally, please do not forget to join us over at intheseats.ca for all your latest and greatest movies, reviews, news, interviews, and everything else under the sun for any kind of updates of all the fun stuff we have going on. But on today's episode, we talk with director John Walker about, well, I'm just going to say it, Assholes, a Theory. Based on the best-selling book, or inspired by, the best-selling book by Aaron James. It is a philosophical look at sort of the rise of asshole behavior, and it's kind of fitting that we post this episode today. I won't say why, but it is Tuesday, November 3rd, so I'll let you infer what you like from that. But John is a veteran filmmaker, and making this movie really made for an interesting exercise as he not necessarily proves the theory, but sort of advances it and highlights some of the comical sides of the argument, but also some of the upsetting sides of the argument, and really how this behavior, no matter what you call it, really has risen to the forefront in the past few years, and it makes for a really interesting talk, and I hope you enjoy.
All right, well, no problem. But I mean, obviously, just to start, I guess, first off, congratulations on the movie.
Oh, thanks.
I absolutely loved it. And I mean, I think my first question is because, and you alluded to this a little bit into the movie, I think you and I discovered the book in a very similar way, just walking through a bookstore and seeing the title and going, oh, assholes? Walk me through sort of that initial discovery and deciding, okay, this has to be a movie.
Yeah. Well, I'll try to be as brief as I can, but I was having a conversation at a film festival with a colleague, a filmmaker, a woman from New York, and had a film. And her first film was really successful. The second one wasn't. And she blurted out, there's four of us sitting around a table, do you have to be an asshole to be a great filmmaker? Because there's all these examples that she was giving and others around the table. And so I was thinking about this, but what was interesting is they came up with a lot of US assholes and less Canadian examples. So I said, I wonder if this is cultural. And I was sort of thinking about it, flying back to Toronto, which when we had the, Ford as our mayor. And I thought, well, yeah, I guess we do have assholes in Canada. Anyway, make a long story short, I went into my favorite bookstore, which is the U of T bookstore on College Street in Toronto. And it was, I usually gather the muses, when I'm in between projects, and I usually find something. And sure enough, I was wandering through looking at all these books, and then there it was on the bookshelf, Assholes, a Theory. And I said, okay, picked it up. And on page 101, the other thing is I do is just do a random look. On 101, it said, if a young boy was born in the United States, Italy, or Israel, he is far more likely to live the life of an asshole than if he was born in Japan, Sweden, or Canada. And I thought, maybe this is cultural. So I looked at the back cover and I thought, okay, this is Aaron James, PhD scholar. This is not some self-help book, which I can't stand, self-help books, right? And how not to be an asshole. That's not what this was. It was a serious philosophical look at all sorts of aspects of this subject. And as I read it, I was fascinated by it. It was far more complex than I thought it was, the issue. And I was in touch with the author within a few days. We had a 3-hour conversation, and I thought immediately this would make a great film. Timely. I felt that it was a very timely subject. So
Was Aaron an easy sell to get on board? That because I
He
can
wa- he
imagine
said-
when he wrote the book, he didn't necessarily envision it as a film.
No. He said, "Oh, that's interesting." He said, "You think you can make a film, a documentary?" And I said, "Yeah, I think." I mean, it was a difficult subject, to visual. Usually, my films are far more visual. It was hard to, there's a lot of people conversations and so on about the subject. But it was a challenge. It's an essay film, but it became much more complex as I was proceeding with the film. At first, I thought, I could have fun with this subject, which we did in the film. We had fun with it, but also it changed when Mr. T was elected south of the border.
Well,
And
it's really weird because I mean, obviously the film has done its festival run, and I mean it was compelling then, but it seems even more compelling now. And I mean, I think what really makes the film stand out is just, like you say, it does have some fun with it, but there are serious moments as well, like the one with the RCMP and sort of issues like that. And I mean, I'm kind of curious, when you were sort of structuring the whole thing, how did you sort of strike the balance to sort of walk the tightrope between the two?
yes, well, it's a bit. I wanted to have fun in the opening, and that because people do like assholes. They can be engaging. If they're successful assholes, they have to be smart. You can't be an idiot. I mean, if you're an asshole and you're a bad artist, forget about it. You're not going. But if you're an asshole and a good artist, then maybe you're going to get somewhere in the world. So they are interesting characters. The problem. So I wanted to introduce the fact that why are we attracted to them? There is a certain attraction to them, and so we go through that aspect. Then I was looking at the more social, like how do are you born an asshole? Is nurture, all those issues. How do you become an asshole? So I was sort of setting up this context, and there's a great comment that you don't call a 4-year-old a little asshole. You may call them a little shit, but not old enough to become an asshole. And maybe when they become teenagers, you're beginning to explore this. Behavior, but it may not necessarily stick. So we sort of go through the roots. It's lighter, but then I realized I wanted to go from the individual experience of the asshole to the more macro. When an asshole is running your country, and when corporations are acting like asshole capitalism and so on. So I want to look at the range, and when you shift to the personal, working with or living with one of these characters, this is not funny anymore. And of course, the very strong, I call her my superhero, Sherry Podolchuk, former RCMP who had to fight, abuse and misogyny and so on in the force. She had to fight back for 20 years against this behavior that she defines as asshole behavior. So I wanted to show the impact, the personal impact. And that's what I think it resonates for a lot of people. We have particularly in a theatrical context, people are laughing, people are loosened up, and then we can handle some of the more serious issues. And I think a lot of people identify with having lived with or worked for these type of people.
And it's appreciating that sociological development of it too, because it feels like the asshole is bred. Like the asshole is born, but the asshole doesn't become a full asshole until they're bred into being an asshole.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah. Like we all, and I say very clearly, when I'm talking to people that, everybody in this room, if I'm in a theater screening, everybody in this room has the potential to behave this way and probably has on certain occasions. And myself included.
Yeah.
Particularly when I was younger, and after reading the book, I'm far less likely to act this way than before I read the book. But the fact of the matter is that it's a question of, are you entrenched? Is this an entrenched sense of entitlement that you have, where your behavior is on a daily basis? And Aaron had a nice sort of on our birthdays, we all feel special and privileged on our birthdays, and we all want our cake and eat it too. And that's fine. And our family and friends buy into this because they will have their day in the sun as well. However, for the asshole, it's his birthday every day. So, and he expects to be treated especially every day, and he feels he's morally superior, he's smarter, he's richer, whatever it might take to make him that permanent asshole. So that's what Aaron calls the proper asshole. Proper asshole.
I mean, I just love how projects like this really do come out of a time, because obviously when the book was written and when you discovered the book, when I discovered the book, it was the swell of the asshole. And especially now, we're almost starting to, at least from a pop culture or cultural standpoint, we're starting to push back against the asshole a little bit.
Yes.
And it, like, how do you think something like this film sort of plays into that?
Well, this is the thing. I think it's, with documentaries in particular, or most films, art and so on, it is timing. That's very, very important. There's a certain zeitgeist where people are open to thinking about the subject that you're putting forward in the film, and it doesn't mean they all have to be topical, but anyway, I felt that it was a subject. Aaron had the vision. Before he saw this coming, he had, as he says in the end of the film, had no idea how far it would go and how quickly. So even he's surprised and shocked at how it's become more relevant. So I think the film just continued that conversation, and it gets it out to a wider audience. Film does travel more than a book does. So
for sure.
Yeah, so he was pleased. We've had a very good relationship, and it's very interesting in the when you make a film, you have no idea what the impact is going to be, and it's wonderful to in the old days when you could go have public screenings. It's sort of a cathartic experience, because it is sort of a tragic aspect of our human condition that there are so many of this people like this, and it's quite cathartic for people. Not only from a personal point of view, if they've dealt with an asshole in their lives, but also the big asshole who's running the world right now. And I think that person is bothering and intimidating all of us. Not all of us. There are his supporters, of course, but it's a factor that's irritating. And so I think that's where the film really touches people. And it's a relief, I think, for people to hear it named as unacceptable behavior, and this is something we should be pushing back against. I think that's the message of the film.
Absolutely. And I mean, I love how you just mentioned just sort of the catharsis of it all, because I think John Cleese is obviously probably the perfect sort of antithesis to that, sort of as the asshole comic who will push back. Walk me through a little bit of just sort of pitching this to John and getting him on board for this.
Yes, yeah. He has been terrific. We've become, quite close as a result of this. And he wanted to meet Aaron, and we had, some nice times together when we were promoting the film at the Toronto screening. So he read the book and liked it and tweeted about it. It's a must read. And he's written books about psychology, surviving the family, and and as he says in the film, I think my mother was an asshole. So he's had personal experience, and so he liked the book. So I wrote him based on I'm making a film because he had an interest in the book, and I explained in detail, a full detailed page, what my approach was to the film. Clearly, what my approach was, and so he wrote back and said, "I like your approach," and he was open to it, and we had a great day together. And then he said, "Let me know when the film's going to be released, and I'll help you promote it." So he's been really, really, very, very supportive, and a wonderful gentleman.
And it really almost does feel like it hits that much harder because he's British. And to hear it explained in a British accent just feels like it has more impact than it would from an American or Canadian comic.
That's right. That's right. Yes, we still look up to the British accent. I mean, even Hollywood emulated that accent all through the 30s and 40s, right? That mid-Atlantic.
Sure.
Actors had to have a certain British to have authority. Even American actors. But yes, and he was. I didn't use this clip in the film, but when we did the interview, he says, yes, I much prefer asshole to arsehole. You know, it's a much stronger word, you know, ass. Because in Britain, arsehole is it can be an endearing, oh, you arsehole, you know, you can
Oh, for
say
sure.
that
Yeah.
to your best friend, you know, and not take offense. But the word asshole is you know, it is still to this day an offensive word to many. And yeah, and it's interesting. We're just starting our U.S. release, theatrical, and then it'll be going streaming. And man, they're very they won't let us use the title, you know, on you know we have to have asterisks on the SS. And this is the book, a New York Times books that you know it's just crazy. The Puritans that come out of the woodwork when you're trying to release something in the U.S. It's crazy.
I mean, I guess that kind of dovetails into my next question because, I mean, obviously, as a documentarian, you've made a wide sort of array of different films, but it's rare to get something that you get to have a little bit of fun with. And I'm kind of curious when you're looking at different, like looking for the next project, as it were, like what
Yeah.
is it about something that will make it stand out for you? Is it sort of
Right.
to be different or just an important topic or whatever?
Yeah, that's a good question. Of course, that's a complex one. But I have done through my career a lot of tragedy. You know, the Stalin period in Russia, the BBC, the Orphans of Manchuria, and hidden Jewish children that suffered the Second World War. I've dealt with First Nations in Canada. You know, so a lot of tragic stories. And so it was over a period of years. So I really did want to shift out of, I couldn't handle the tragedy anymore, you know, and then I realized I don't mean to be, you know, pretentious, but if you look at Shakespeare, you know, he did histories, tragedies, and comedies, you know, so there was a balance, you know, and I think as a human, we need this balance. And, you know, tragedy is very attractive for documentary because it's dramatic and it's emotional and it's very moving. So, you know, the majority of documentaries are often tragedies and tragic, you know, situations. Less so with comedy. So, you know, I've done art films about art, artists, and music. Drummer's Dream is one of my favorite films, and the theme is joy. It's a film about pure joy. That's the only thing about it is joy and the art of mastering an instrument, and people come out of that film just, you know, so that was a film that I loved doing. So yes, it is finding that balance, and I feel very strongly that there is so much tragedy in the world that we need to have a balance and a personal and you know, political balance to just so much negativity, you know. And that's what that's what I tried to do with Assholes. You know, I tried to have both.
Well, I think you succeed. And I mean, another thing that always sort of jumps out at me, not only particularly for this film, but I mean, anytime when you're thinking about documentary film, it's there are elements that sort of audiences don't always appreciate because, especially for documentary, like it can be something that you're assembling slowly over a long piece of time, or it can be you get a phone call, you've got to pack a bag and put your camera in and go shoot something. How fast did Assholes kind of come together?
Right. Well, the funding came together relatively quickly. You know, people were interested in the subject, and I could feel the timeliness to it. Of course, the title is it's you know, it's a very catchy title, and it had credibility because of, you know, to use that title. You know, if there hadn't been a book by a PhD scholar, you know, might have been tougher. You know, it had tougher sell. You know, possibly, but that came. But the making of it, you know, I talked to a lot of people that were going to be in the film. I won't mention any names, but you know, some well-known people and Americans. And post-Trump election, they didn't want to be involved. You know, so after Trump was elected and I was starting to shoot the film, I was like, you know, I had like five or six people say, no, I don't want to be involved in this film. So that was tough. So I had to, you know, pick up and yeah. But yeah, and it was very complicated. I had a big board, you know, the big 4x8, you know, sheet with all kinds of notes, trying to, you know, thematically how to, you know, and because it's not a, you know, I'm a narrative storyteller. I like telling stories. I come from that cultural tradition, and documentaries very much rooted in oral cultural history and telling stories and so on. And So, you know, this was more an essay. It wasn't so much a story as such. So that was challenging, but so we were a while in the shooting and, you know, piecing it together and then looking at the material and say, okay, we need this balance and building it as we went. It wasn't something I just went out and shot.
For sure. Now, I mean, I love, I mean, that kind of dovetails into something else I wanted to ask, because when obviously when someone writes a book and is trying to prove a theory, it's different than when you're trying to visually prove a theory. And I'm kind of curious, from your perspective, how does Assholes, a Theory, the film, sort of advance the theory?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that like we stuck with the title of theory. I actually, in some ways, I really didn't deal with the theory so much as he defines in classical terms, philosophical terms, you know, he defines the argument and then explores it. And so I really used his defining definition of that. This is a moral character and that can be defined. This is not a word that one should use because you don't like somebody, but you're actually defining a moral character who has a deep, and he defines it, you know, deep sense of you know, in sense of entitlement and unwillingness to listen to others and so on. So I was really, you know, he was coming up with the theory and I was testing this theory in reality, you know, in real life. And I sort of said that in the commentary. So I took his theory. I swallowed the theory that he had, but I spent time on testing the theory.
Okay.
And that theory was his definition, that it's as I say, I'm repeating myself, but his definition that it's a moral character, that was his theory. And he went into all sorts of detail on that. But I focused on, is it real?
Well, and I think you proved that because it is real. It's a sad reality.
Yeah. So I was substantiating his book. So I was taking the theory, and like he did in terms of having examples to prove his theory, I was going out and taking that next step further and proving it in actuality.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess just to put a bow on this, I got to end with a fun one. As obviously the filmmaker behind Assholes, a Theory, I'm curious, who is your favorite cinematic asshole?
Oh, yeah. I don't think you're going to get that out of me. Because as Aaron says, you know, if you start calling out other people as assholes, you know, you have to be very careful.
Oh, it can be a fictional character. It doesn't have to be, you know.
A fictional asshole.
Yeah, fictional, like cinematic fictional asshole.
That's interesting. Yeah, because there are, you know, I could come up with some assholes that are.
Yeah, I won't ask you to throw anybody real under the bus.
No. Bus. Yeah. so somebody in my imagination, what? Well, I guess, you know, I could throw in a name, Leni Riefenstahl. Triumph of the Will.
I'll back that. Yeah.
You know, and I say that because, you know, documentarians can be very smug because, you know, a lot of us are on the left.
Yeah.
You know, and look out if the right starts to take over this, you know, this genre, and because there's a fine line between exploring knowledge and hopefully gaining some wisdom and propaganda. You know, it's ripe for propaganda, this medium, and I worry about that. You know, that the use of it as a propaganda medium, and which can be true on the left and the right.
No, absolutely. And I mean, and honestly, you know, this film could have been used as propaganda, but I don't think it did.
Yeah.
It does walk that.
No. Yeah. And that's reason why we ignored certain people, you know, without spoiling it, but completely ignoring, because some, you know, ultimately that asshole should be ignored. And the problem is that the media loves asshole behavior, particularly social media. Yeah. Even more, and it empowers the assholes. So I was making that point in the film by ignoring certain assholes that we're all very much aware of.
And you know what? I think that's a good point to end on, to not to empower the asshole. And I just want to say thank you again for the time, and good luck with the release in the States. I'm sure it'll do great. I
hope so. Yes, thank you. You know, I appreciate your understanding of the documentary genre. A lot of people don't understand it, and you obviously have an understanding of the medium. So. Appreciate that.
Thanks again, John.
All right. Very good. Thank you. Bye-bye.